I'm excited about it. I'm very bullish on the agri-food industry in Canada. I wouldn't have invested significantly in what we're doing if I wasn't. I'm not sure we're quite yet there with our education systems realizing where things are heading. And I think that's where both, public and private sector can come together and really work with each other to get to some of these current and future skills and provide a greater supply of labor that are able to operate in that new, innovative, automated environment. Hello, I'm Frank Burdzy. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Homestyle Selections.
Well, Frank, it's really great to meet you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I want to speak to you about your company, Homestyle Selections, your journey through the entrepreneurship adventure, and also how you see the agri-food sector in Canada evolving over the next couple of years. So could we start with Homestyle Selections, the company you co-founded? Can you please briefly introduce us to the company and what you guys do?
Sure. Late in 2019, my partner, Lee Newton, and I had a concept or an idea that we thought there was great opportunities to build out a platform in Canada that would serve both grocery retail and food service companies, delivering to them fresh prepared products for the deli counter or for the restaurants. And really, Homestyle was born from that concept or idea.
Why did you decide to start your own thing? And what do you think is in an entrepreneur's DNA? What would cause somebody to make that choice and take that path?
Yeah, my entire career and actually life has been around the agri-food and agribusiness world. I started off, grew up on a prairie farm in Saskatchewan, and from there also took over some farming operation while I went to university and while I had my first career job. So I was very active on the farm, growing various produce and livestock at the time. And then just also working very closely in the agribusiness, helping farmers determine what they should grow, but also helping them market their products around the world. As I was working, I think the farmers are actually the ultimate entrepreneur. There's lots of risk, there's lots of opportunity and reward for hard work, and there's lots of learning along the way. So it was in my DNA from that point in time. I'd also worked for many large organizations in the agri-food business, food processing, and worldwide distribution. So I learned a lot of the things that it would take to be successful in running a business. And I always had this drive and desire to have a business that I could say that I've helped create from the beginning. And that was the first step. When I was looking for a change in my career in 2019, I took the step of looking for some partners to work with and really creating a story and a vision of something that I was fairly confident there was going to be a market for because it was a lot of the current trends. And I think that's part of, back to your question about the DNA of an entrepreneur, it's being in tune with and aware of where the markets are currently, but also where they're going. And if it's a product-based business that you're creating, is being clear that consumer is king and making sure that there's an awareness of what the consumer wants and finding innovative and creative ways and efficient ways of being able to execute and provide them with what they're looking for.
When you look at the main challenges that you've faced, both from a general growing the business type perspective and the challenges that come with that within Canada, but also maybe challenges that are specific to the agri-food sector, what main challenges come up for you? And could you maybe identify one or two of the solutions that you've found that helped you get over those humps?
I would say in our particular story, the two biggest challenges we faced, number one was the pandemic. We had our business thesis refined. We went out and raised our capital. We aligned our debt structure so that we could go and execute quickly. And then as it turned out, we purchased 3 different businesses and they were all purchased during the pandemic. So the ability to do proper due diligence, the ability to interact with the teams in the companies that we acquired, the ability to start to understand the operations. We believe we're fairly good operators, but it's tough to do that remotely. So it was very difficult early stages to be able to get in and understand how we could actually improve the businesses and enhance the business platform that we had. Probably the second major thing for us, again, and it's a common theme across, I think, North America and maybe the world, was the talent side and the people side. Each of the acquisitions came with a little different model. The first one, we had an existing management team in place. The second one was basically a group of individuals who were wanting to sell their business who'd grown it from scratch and they were ready to retire. The third one was purchased out of bankruptcy, so it didn't come with a lot of infrastructure or overhead. So we had to kind of, with those three business models, really identify, who could run this and work with us to make this successful, right from the front line all the way up to the C-suite. And that was a challenge just because there's such a gap in key leadership levels and key operating levels. There's a gap of people available and willing to take on the challenge. The solution we had to both of these things, if we go back to the pandemic, we did whatever we could to use technology and leverage it. So everybody was on screen a lot. And then as soon as we could, we ended up going out to our operations and interacting with people, letting them know that they were an important part of our family, and then also looking for new ideas to come right from the floor to the executive level on how we could improve the business. So engagement in a different way than we were accustomed to, but nonetheless, engagement was important. In terms of what we did on the talent side, basically, I've got 35 years plus experience in the agribusiness world, and I just reached very, very aggressively and deeply into my network. And a number of the senior people that we brought into the organization, I had worked with before. Some of them I'd worked for, some of them I worked with. And the number one thing is we knew we could trust them because of a relationship over time and their success in the interim since I last worked with them. And that was an important aspect to us, was to build a team that we could trust and trusted us, and to make sure that we had top quality people that we know have had a performance track record before.
So I want to know what you see in terms of the next couple of years. What's next on the horizon within the agri-food industry in Canada, and what you identify as the opportunities for Canada in that space?
I've had the good fortune of being able to travel a bit around the world and see many different ecosystems in the agri-food world. One thing that always impresses me about the Canadian agri-food industry is its resilience and willingness to innovate. And I'm excited about it. I'm very bullish on the agri-food industry in Canada. I wouldn't have invested significantly in what we're doing if I wasn't. I just see that there's always a willingness to try new things, to be responsive to the marketplace, to be responsive to what consumers want, and be in tune with that. And that is a good first step in anything. And then the second one is to invest in innovation and automation. So within our business, for example, where we make a lot of food products, we've got about 180 different distinct and unique products that we provide. It's difficult sometimes to get cohesive automation to be able to leverage that, but we've brought in some very, very good leadership in the company and operations and on the commercial side to help us get better. And I think that's just an illustration of how when we in Canada set our minds to do something, we'll go through the necessary steps. I believe innovation and automation are the two things that are going to continue to drive and help us thrive in agribusiness, and there's a big, strong willingness to do that.
Do you think there's a need for any kind of supports, whether it be from governments or other bodies, to help agri-food players in Canada do those two things, innovate, automate, and maybe others that will increase the competitiveness of our industry?
Yeah, most definitely. Like, first and foremost, I'm a big believer that private and independent business needs to and can take care of most of the needs that it has without a ton of intervention. But I think where the support and assistance can really come, particularly from our governments at all levels, is really in the traditional areas of education and creation of support for market. And I don't mean financial support necessarily. I mean more like opening doors with various marketplaces. I also mean helping to create the kind of skill base that we need, because general labor is going away. It's moving much more to, and we've heard about this for years and years. It's more of the, intellectual property that's important, the people that can actually operate more complex systems and processes. And I think, in my view, there's still a gap there. I'm not sure we're quite yet there with our education systems realizing where things are heading. And I think that's where both, public and private sector can come together and really work with each other to get to some of these current and future skills and provide a greater supply of labor that are able to operate in that new, innovative, automated environment. It does seem to me that oftentimes most of the learning that goes on for entrepreneurs is learning, what is it called? The University of Life. It seems like most of the learning comes by the School of Hard Knocks of when you get out there, you trial and error. I think there could still be more emphasis on how to properly create and structure and plan for a individual entrepreneur-driven business. I also think in terms of the kind of skills that are required through whether it's the tech schools or support systems within universities, just helping people understand and have a window into seeing the kind of automation and innovation that is coming down the pipe. I think we've made great strides, and many of the universities have started to respond, I think, over the last 5 or 10 years, but I think there's still a ways to come.
One big thing that happened for you and for Homestyle recently is that you did receive investment from CBGF, the Canadian Business Growth Fund. I'd like to ask why you opted to accept that investment and what it means for Homestyle and your future. What's it going to enable you to do? What are the plans?
So when we raised additional capital through CBGF, we were pretty clear on what we needed that for. We first of all needed a part of it for completing an acquisition that we were working on. It was just one of those that we had enough capital, but we also didn't 100% know where the end purchase price was going to be. So they helped with that, stepped right up and stepped up quickly. And the second thing was we marked a significant amount of the investment that they made into growth capital. So that's in improving our assets, improving productivity, and improving processes. And so far, we've invested most of the available dollars that they have contributed in process and equipment improvement, as well as innovation and automation. And it's helped us position ourselves for great growth going forward from here.
Sounds like an interesting next chapter. As someone who has a few chapters in his book before this one, I'm wondering what advice you'd have for young Canadians who are looking at entrepreneurship, looking to launch a company, scale a company. What should their priorities be when considering that and launching into it?
I appreciate the question. I've had the good fortune of being able to coach and mentor, I think it's 3 or 4 entrepreneurs at the current time. And whether it's in the a production environment or a technology environment, my advice always is come out and have a clear vision of where you want to go. It's going to change over time a little bit, but just spend the time up front in thinking through and planning where you want your entity to go and what you want it to provide and what you want it to deliver. Then the second biggest item I can advise on is to seek out trusted advisors. And I know that's maybe a little cliche because a lot of people say they get lots of advice, but it's seek out people that can help challenge you in areas that maybe you aren't the strongest in. Maybe you're excellent at marketing and sales, but maybe operations isn't your thing, or logistics and supply chain. Diversify your advisory group to allow you to be challenged in a number of areas, but also leverage those advisors. I'm just finding probably the most thrilling thing for me in my environment is the willingness of people who've been there, done that, to help those that haven't been there, done that yet. So leverage that. And the final thing I'd suggest for entrepreneurs everywhere and people that are starting or growing a business is remain humble. One of the most difficult things is you can have some very rapid success and you can be going in a great direction, but man, there's a lot of curveballs that can come your way. And I think if you remain humble, you'll also become attuned to when those curveballs are coming and then seek the support before they become big issues.
Well, I think as somebody like yourself who grew up on a farm and in agriculture with all the last minute crazy unexpected changes that could arise, I'm sure that's advice that's very deeply ingrained within yourself as well. Thanks so much for sharing it, Frank. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity.